Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you are learning English right now, or maybe you know someone who spent years studying,
Hmm.
and they still feel, stuck, frustrated, maybe even completely paralyzed whenever they have to actually open their mouth and speak,
Right.
then this deep dive is absolutely for you. We are going to pull back the curtain today on what we're calling the secret to English fluency. And I promise you, the truth is, well, it's almost the exact opposite of what the traditional education system has probably taught
Oh,
you.
that's absolutely right. I mean, we've looked at sources across language acquisition research, cognitive psychology, practical teaching methods,
Hmm.
and they all point to the same a fundamental flaw in how people usually learn.
Just.
Well, so many learners spend years, literally years, chasing this perfect, completely unattainable ideal of English.
And they do it through that traditional route, right? The grammar workbooks, memorizing thousands of flashcards.
Exactly. And, those super expensive structured courses that just emphasize rules over everything else.
And look, while that input, the rules, the vocabulary, it's necessary, right?
Of course.
But the sources are so clear that this approach is, well, it's incomplete. Or sometimes it's actually counterproductive to the real goal.
Which is just speaking the language naturally, freely.
Yeah, it's like studying the theory of an engine for 10 years. You know every single component, every gear, but you've never actually turned the key and driven the car.
That's a perfect analogy. The knowledge is just locked away in your head.
Right.
So our mission today is really tailored for you, the listener, the learner. We are going to look at what conversational fluency really is
Okay.
and why those traditional, accuracy-first approaches so often lead to this crisis of confidence.
And then we're introducing a solution.
A very straightforward, almost counterintuitive solution that comes from psychology.
Mm.
We want to shift your entire mindset.
Okay, so what's the shift?
We want you to stop obsessing over accuracy,
Yeah.
being perfectly correct all the time, and really start focusing on flow,
Just being communicative.
just being communicative.
Okay, so let's unpack that right away because that shift, it has to start with awareness, doesn't it?
It has to.
When people say they want to be fluent, they usually have this image in their head of what that means. So what do they actually believe they need to achieve? Because that's where the paralysis begins, right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it's a massive, massive problem. Learners stack this tremendous amount of pressure on themselves based on these misconceptions.
Yeah.
And that self-imposed pressure, it creates an immediate psychological barrier. It just paralyzes them before they even manage to string a sentence together.
So you're fighting yourself before you even start the conversation.
You are. You're your own worst enemy.
So what are these common and, like you said, fundamentally incorrect beliefs about what it means to be fluent?
Based on all the research, we can boil it down to three main ones. Three beliefs that create this immense pressure and, lead to stagnation.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the belief that fluency means perfect speech.
Perfect speech.
Yeah. This is the idea that you absolutely must speak exactly like a native speaker.
Which implies, what? Flawless grammar.
Flawless grammar. Perfect textbook pronunciation of every single sound. And, having this impeccable high-level vocabulary in every single conversation.
That is just an impossible standard. I mean, especially if you set that for yourself as the requirement to even begin speaking.
Just
Even highly educated native speakers, we stumble, we use run-on sentences, we make grammar slips all the time mid-thought.
precisely. We have to remember that language it's dynamic. And aiming for perfection means you are setting yourself up for guaranteed failure the very first time you hesitate or, use the wrong preposition.
So that expectation of perfection is a huge mental hurdle.
A huge one. And it translates directly into a fear of speaking, a fear of output.
Okay, so that's a big one. What's the second misconception that adds to this heavy burden?
The second one is the idea of omniscience.
Omniscience, like knowing everything.
Exactly. People believe that to be truly fluent, they have to be able to talk about any topic.
Any topic.
Yeah, from abstract philosophy and quantum physics to complex global politics, all with the same ease and sophistication.
Wow.
And this forces learners to constantly chase this obscure, high-level, complex vocabulary that they will almost never use in, daily functional communication.
Because not just overwhelming, it distracts you from what's actually important.
Totally.
You're spending all your time studying terms for, I don't know, astrophysics, when all you really need to know is how to ask where the nearest bus stop is.
It creates enormous vocabulary
I
anxiety.
can imagine. Okay, and the third one.
The third common belief is that speed equals fluency.
Ah, okay.
People watch native speakers, they see them speaking quickly, using contractions, filler words, slang, and they just assume that to be fluent, they have to talk at lightning speed with no pauses.
Which leads to what?
Rushing, trying to translate way too quickly in your head, stumbling over your words, and ultimately making more errors.
Which then breaks your confidence.
Exactly. It breaks your confidence, and crucially, it breaks your flow.
So let's recap. We've got this pursuit of perfection, so no mistakes. The pursuit of total knowledge, so you have to know every word for every topic. And the pursuit of extreme speed.
Right.
And the analysis here is so important. These three things, they aren't just difficult goals, they are overwhelming, and they actively paralyze the learner. They lock the words right inside your head.
They create this constant internal self-editing loop.
I see.
The learner spends more time monitoring themselves, correcting sentences in their head or just preparing to speak than they do actually communicating the idea.
And if you're always mentally checking your grammar before you speak,
Then by definition, you are in the opposite state of flow.
Mm.
You just can't do both at the same time.
okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. If the goal is not perfection or total knowledge or extreme speed, what is the true functional goal we should be chasing?
We have to get back to the root of the word itself.
What?
The word fluent comes from the Latin word fluere.
Fluer. And what does that mean?
It literally just means to flow.
To flow. It's that simple.
It is. And it's an incredibly simple but, profound insight that modern language education just often misses.
So fluency is quite literally about flow.
Exactly. The core insight is that fluency is all about expressing your ideas smoothly and naturally.
Without those constant jarring stops.
Right. Without struggling for the words, you need to just get a thought out. Think of a conversation like a stream of water.
Yep.
It might have some small rocks in it, some eddies. Those are the occasional mistakes or minor hesitations. But the overall current keeps moving forward.
And it reaches its destination.
Yes, which is the listener's comprehension.
That makes so much sense because you can absolutely be fluent and still make mistakes. I mean, I stumble over a name or use the wrong word in English all the time.
We all do.
But I still maintain flow because my brain can just quickly correct itself or substitute a word without, that 5-second internal panic pause.
That is the crucial implication. That's the thing learners have to internalize. Native speakers are fluent because they maintain flow. They get their ideas out without massive hesitation, even when they slip up.
So the big realization has to be
That making mistakes is entirely compatible with being fluent. Fluency is measured by the speed of your recovery, not the absence of error.
wow. Let's really drill down on that distinction, though, between fluency and accuracy, because this feels like where the whole paradigm shift happens.
It is.
We need to define them clearly and kind of explore that tension between them.
Okay, so accuracy. Accuracy is defined as correctness. Simple as that.
Right.
It's all about using the proper grammar rules, the right verb tenses, selecting the perfect vocabulary where, all the stuff you see in textbooks and on tests, it's explicit knowledge.
And fluency.
Fluency is the smoothness, the speed, the overall ease of delivery. It's that unimpeded flow of speech that allows for seamless communication.
It's the ability to just get the language out quickly.
Yes, even if what comes out has imperfections. It's more about implicit, intuitive knowledge.
I get the definitions, but I can imagine a lot of listeners are thinking, wait a minute, if I stop focusing on accuracy, will my communication just fall apart?
And that's a totally legitimate concern.
Uh,
But let's illustrate why focusing too heavily on accuracy first is, well, it's often counterproductive. Think of it in terms of, like, a skill. Accuracy is knowing how to use the brakes and the steering wheel of a car.
Mhm.
Fluency is driving smoothly on the highway.
You need both.
You absolutely need both. But if you only focus on the mechanics of braking at every single millisecond, you'll never leave the driveway.
Okay, so let's explore the two extremes of that idea. What does someone who is high accuracy, low fluency look like?
Oh, this is the classic textbook learner. The person who is almost crippled by their own knowledge.
Right.
They've read every grammar book. They know all the subtle differences between, modal auxiliary verbs. But when they speak, they construct these perfect sentences.
Mm.
but they do it so slowly.
Because they're checking everything.
They are painstakingly checking and double-checking every word, every conjugation, for errors before it even leaves their mouth.
So their speech is choppy, full of stops and starts.
Exactly. They are correct, but they do not flow. All their cognitive energy is being spent on self-correction, not on the actual message.
Okay, now contrast that with the opposite. Someone who is high fluency, but maybe lower accuracy.
Right. So this person might have been studying for less time. Maybe they learned English mostly through just talking to people, not formal classes. They speak quickly and smoothly. They have great eye contact. They communicate their core idea instantly, even if they make mistakes.
Can you give an example?
Sure. They might say something like, yesterday I go to store because I need milk. But the store, they don't have, so I go different store.
Grammatically flawed, for sure. The tenses are all over the place.
They are. But the communication is 100% effective.
The message got through.
Instantly.
Yeah.
The flow was maintained. The social interaction was a success.
And here's the tragedy that the sources highlight, right? Learners so often sacrifice their fluency because they're obsessing over accuracy.
They get stuck in that internal editing process, checking every preposition, every verb tense.
And that hesitation, that self-correction, that's the very thing that destroys the flow.
It is. If you let the pursuit of perfection break your flow, you halt your conversational development completely.
So if the goal is flow, that internal self-editing has to stop. Which brings us to the overarching secret.
We've redefined the goal. Now, how do we reach it?
Well, the overarching secret to English fluency, and this sounds deceptively simple, but it is truly revolutionary in practice, is this. Stop trying to be perfect.
That is the pivotal moment for every learner. The moment you consciously choose to grant yourself permission to be imperfect.
To just speak the flawed sentence.
Yes, you immediately remove that primary psychological barrier that prevents you from speaking. You're trading internal monitoring for external communication.
Exactly. You have to stop obsessing over every little mistake, every verb tense, every grammar rule while you're in the middle of talking.
Communication first.
Communication first. If the listener understands you, you have succeeded. Period.
And this brings us to part one of the secret. Embrace imperfection.
Okay.
This means you have to shift your whole perspective. Mistakes are not just okay. They are an active, necessary, essential part of the learning process.
They're data points.
They're data points, exactly.
So the common learner thought, which is, I can't be fluent because I still make mistakes and people will judge me.
That has to be forcefully rejected.
And replaced with what?
Replaced with, I am becoming fluent because I am making mistakes and learning from them.
Let's use that concrete example you mentioned of the two students, Anna and Maria, because it illustrates this trade-off so perfectly.
Okay, so Anna. Anna had studied English for 3 years. She was the definition of accurate.
A model student.
A model student. She knew complex grammar. She could ace any test. She knew how to use the passive voice. But her relentless dedication to perfection completely paralyzed her speech outside of a classroom.
So what did that sound like?
When she spoke, the flow was just completely gone.
Yeah.
She would say, and I want you to imagine the painful hesitation here. Yesterday, I went to the store because milk.
Ooh, technically correct.
Perfectly correct. But the cognitive load required to produce that correctness meant her communication was slow, unnatural, and just, not fluent at all.
Okay, so now contrast that with Maria.
So Maria had only studied for about a year, and she was focused on communication, on immersion, not on finishing workbooks.
Right.
She made plenty of grammatical errors, and she didn't stop to self-correct them. So she would just say, yesterday I go to store because I need milk. But the store they don't have, so I go to a different store.
Okay, the grammar is clearly flawed there.
It is. But we understood her perfectly, instantly, without any effort. She spoke smoothly, she maintained a continuous flow, and she was confident.
And here's the key outcome that the sources emphasized, right? Maria improved faster, by far, even though she knew less grammar on paper.
Much faster.
But why? Why did Maria leap ahead of Anna, who had years more study time?
Because Maria was actively using English. She was engaging in real communication. When she said, yesterday I go, and a native speaker responded smoothly using went, her brain subconsciously registered that difference.
So she was internalizing the correct pattern just through exposure.
Yes, through repetition and exposure. Anna, on the other hand, was so paralyzed by her perfectionism that she barely practiced speaking at all. She kept all that knowledge locked away.
She couldn't activate it in real time.
Exactly. Maria was learning and internalizing corrections naturally through just a high volume of speaking.
That moves us perfectly into part 2 of The Secret. Focus on communication, not complexity.
Right.
We tend to think that being sophisticated means being fluent, but for the learner trying to build flow, the opposite is often true.
Absolutely. The goal is clarity. It is not using impressive five-syllable vocabulary words or overly complex sentence structures.
Simple and clear is better.
Simple and clear always facilitates flow better than complex and confusing language, especially when you're under the pressure of a real-time conversation.
We often try to translate our complex thoughts from our native language directly into equally complex English.
And it just results in this stilted, unnatural stiffness. It's just too heavy for your brain to carry and translate in real time.
Well, so what's an example of this?
Okay, imagine you had a really terrible day at work. You could try to construct this stiff, formal sentence that just breaks the flow because it's so complex. Something like, I experienced a particularly challenging and exhausting day at my workplace due to numerous complicated tasks.
Oh my gosh, that's a mouthful. It takes way too long just to formulate that sentence in your head.
Right. The natural, simple version that flows smoothly and communicates the exact same core meaning instantly is just,
I had a really hard day at work.
I had a really hard day at work. There were a lot of difficult tasks, and I had some problems with my coworkers.
That simple structure is just easier to recall under pressure. It flows better, and it gets the job done faster.
Simplicity is the key to velocity here.
I love that. Simplicity is key to velocity. Okay, so finally, that brings us to part 3. Prioritize output over input. This is where we move from theory into action.
It is.
So define those terms for us again, just to make sure they stick.
So input is consuming language. It's listening to this deep dive, to TV, to music, and it's reading books and articles. Input is essential. It's what builds your knowledge base.
Okay, and output.
Output is actively producing language. It's speaking and writing. Output is the test of your knowledge base. It's where the learning actually solidifies.
And what's the typical imbalance we see in learners who feel stuck?
The vast majority of stuck learners spend an overwhelming amount of time consuming input and far, far too little time producing output.
They feel like they need to study more grammar or learn more words before they're ready to speak.
Exactly. They spend hours learning rules but barely speak at all. They're treating input as the goal, not the means to an end.
But the sources are so clear that fluency is a motor skill, right? And motor skills are only acquired through repetition and production.
Exactly. The analogy from the sources is perfect. It's like learning to swim.
Right.
You can read every book on the physics of buoyancy and water resistance. You can study the perfect breaststroke technique. That's all input.
But you can't learn to swim by reading books.
You can't. You have to get in the water. Even if it's awkward and messy and you swallow a bit of water, you have to try and fail until the coordination becomes automatic.
So you have to actually speak, produce the language to become a fluent speaker.
You have to. Input fills the tank, but output is what drives the car. Production is the engine of fluency. It forces your brain to retrieve words and construct sentences under real-time pressure, which is a completely different cognitive function than just understanding a sentence you read.
Okay, that covers the 3 parts of The Secret. Embrace imperfection, focus on clear communication, and prioritize speaking. That's the theory.
Right.
But knowing the secret and actually implementing it when you have years of these perfectionist habits ingrained, those are 2 very different challenges. So how do you shift that habit of self-censorship?
It is genuinely difficult.
Yeah.
And it has to start with awareness. You have to become a detective of your own mind.
Okay.
You have to recognize when perfectionism is actively holding you back. Notice those long pauses, that feeling of obsessing over whether to use has been or was.
You have to catch yourself in the act.
You do.
So once I notice I'm doing that, what's the action I need to take?
The necessary action is to make a conscious and often uncomfortable decision to just let go.
Let go.
You have to grant yourself explicit, even verbal, permission to be imperfect. Just say the sentence, even if you know it's flawed, and tell yourself, flow is more valuable than correctness right now. It's a battle against your own internal critic.
And winning that battle leads directly to building confidence, doesn't it? Because confidence and fluency are so deeply connected.
Inextricably. Low confidence leads to hesitation, and hesitation is the very thing that breaks your flow. It's a vicious cycle.
So how do we break it? The sources outline a path for building that courage gradually, right? You don't just jump into the deep end.
No, you can't go from zero output to debating politics with a native speaker overnight. You have to start small.
So what's step one? How do we start building that speaking muscle?
The first and lowest pressure step is to talk to yourself.
Talk to yourself.
Yes, practice speaking English when you are completely alone. This removes 100% of the external pressure and judgment. It lets the words flow freely. No one is listening, so you can experiment, make all the mistakes you want, and stumble without any consequences.
But what are some practical ways to do that? Just saying talk to yourself
Yeah.
can feel a bit aimless.
Sure. One super effective technique is shadowing. You listen to a short clip of a native speaker and immediately try to imitate their rhythm and their words out loud. Okay. Another is just narration. Narrate your actions. I'm boiling water for tea now. Or narrate a short scene from a movie you're watching. It just forces your brain into production mode in a very safe way.
That's a great safe space. What's step two once you're comfortable with the self-talk?
You move on to practice with a study partner. Find someone who's in the same boat as you.
Another learner.
Exactly. Through a language exchange app or a university group. This creates a non-judgmental safe space where you both understand the goal is communication and flow, not perfection.
And you can set ground rules.
You should.
Mm.
Agree to only correct errors if they completely block understanding. Otherwise, just let the conversation flow.
Okay, and then the final stage of building confidence.
Advance to native speakers. Use the confidence you've gained in those first two stages to approach real-world conversations.
In a coffee shop, at work, online, with a tutor.
Right. By this point, you've already started to break that internal paralysis, and you're ready for higher stakes, but also higher reward situations. It's a structured, gradual progression.
And this creates a beautiful positive cycle, doesn't it?
It does.
Speaking builds your confidence because you realize you can communicate. That confidence makes speaking easier, which encourages you to speak more, which leads to better flow and even more confidence. It's an upward spiral.
But we have to be honest about that initial hurdle. If you lack confidence right now, you won't speak, which means you can't get the practice you need to build confidence. You just stay stuck.
So you have to force yourself to speak at first.
You have to. Even when you feel scared or anxious or foolish, you have to break that standstill.
And let's really emphasize this point. Feeling uncomfortable, stumbling, even being a little embarrassed, that is completely normal.
It's not just normal, it's temporary. It is not a sign that you are a bad learner.
Right.
The sources are so clear that with consistency, you'll see noticeable growth in both confidence and fluency within just a few weeks of pushing past that initial fear. That awkward feeling is just your brain adjusting. It's a growth state, not a failure state.
You know, this all hits really close to home for me. When I was learning Spanish for, gosh, like 2 years, I did it the traditional way.
The textbook way.
Exactly. I was obsessed with perfect conjugations, knowing the difference between sir and a star, making sure my sentence structure was flawless.
And the result?
The result was I knew a massive amount of Spanish, but I was so terrified of making a mistake that I could barely speak a single sentence in real life without panicking and just shutting down.
So your accuracy was high, but your fluency was basically zero.
Zero. So what was the catalyst for the change?
What happened?
Complete forced immersion. I took a vacation to Mexico. And suddenly I couldn't survive without speaking. I had to speak daily, sometimes hourly, just to order food or get directions or negotiate a taxi fare.
And you made mistakes.
I made countless mistakes. Wrong verb tenses, constantly mixing up gendered articles, major mispronunciations. It was rough. It was honestly embarrassing at times.
The anxiety must have been high at first.
It was. But here was the big revelation. People understood me perfectly, even with all those errors. Even when I used the infinitive form of a verb when I should have used the past tense. People were patient, they were helpful, and they responded to my actual message, not my grammar errors.
They didn't judge you.
They didn't judge me. They were just relieved I was trying to communicate. And my whole goal shifted. It went from achieving grammatical perfection to just achieving connection.
And your fluency.
It improved exponentially. Because I was finally using the language as a tool, not treating it like a test.
That is the perfect real-world illustration of why flow has to trump accuracy, especially in the early and intermediate stages.
Right.
But that shift, it raises the biggest objection in the minds of a lot of learners.
The big but.
The big but.
Which is logically, okay, if I don't focus on accuracy right now, and I just focus on pushing words out,
All right.
Won't my English just stay full of mistakes forever? Won't I fossilize these errors?
That is a very valid, logical concern. It's rooted in all the traditional learning models.
But the answer is,
The counterargument, which is backed by decades of research into language acquisition, is a firm no. Your English will not stay full of mistakes forever.
but why not? If I stop drilling grammar rules, how does my brain correct the errors I'm making?
Because accuracy improves naturally.
Yeah.
It's a byproduct of two things working together. High volume output, so speaking a lot, and consistent, continuous, high quality input, listening to and reading well-formed English.
So my brain just fixes the mistakes on its own, implicitly.
Exactly. It's the natural mechanism children use to acquire their first language. They start out speaking with tons of errors, right?
But of course.
But over time, they hear the correct forms used by adults thousands and thousands of times, and their brain just naturally internalizes the correct patterns. They acquire the grammar implicitly through exposure and practice, not by memorizing rule books.
So if I focus on achieving fluency, the flow first, the consistency of speaking and listening creates this feedback loop that allows accuracy to just catch up later.
Yes, your brain is a pattern recognition machine. The more you speak, the more you notice where your output deviates from the correct input you're hearing, and over time, that gap just shrinks automatically.
And if you focus only on accuracy first,
You risk getting stuck in the trap. You might never gain the fluency you need to actually put all that knowledge to use. Fluency unlocks the opportunity for organic accuracy development.
that addresses the major concern and gives everyone permission to move forward without guilt. So with that framework established, let's get into the practical toolkit. What are the 6 actionable strategies that someone can implement, starting today?
Okay, strategy number 1 is fundamental to this whole new mindset. Set fluency goals, not perfection goals.
Right. We need to define goals that measure communication success, not grammatical correctness.
You have to throw out those unrealistic and discouraging goals like speak English with 0 mistakes or sound exactly like a news anchor.
So what's a better goal?
Set measurable flow-based goals that focus on observable behavior. For example, I want to be able to have a 10-minute conversation with someone new without any of those long, silent pauses.
That's a fantastic flow-based metric. What's another one?
I want to be able to express my opinion on a familiar topic like my job or a movie I saw and defend it for 3 minutes without struggling for common words. Or even simpler, I want to initiate one piece of small talk in English every day this week.
These goals measure communication ability, not perfection, and they're achievable, which is motivating.
Exactly.
Okay, strategy number 2, and we've touched on this. Practice speaking out loud every single day.
Consistency is the engine of flow. This is non-negotiable. Even if it's only for 5 or 10 minutes a day, that daily habit of forcing your mouth and brain to connect in real time is exponentially more valuable than 1 hour of intense study once a week.
You're trying to make the act of speaking automatic.
Right, and that requires daily repetition to build that retrieval speed.
And what should people talk about in those short windows of time?
Anything that's relevant and immediate. Talk about your day, your feelings, your plans for the weekend. Or just describe what you see around you right now. If you're struggling, use a technique like see it, say it, look at an object, and just try to describe it in English for 30 seconds.
And make it relevant to your interests.
Yes, that's even better. If you love fantasy novels, give a quick summary of the chapter you just read. It makes the practice meaningful and personal.
Okay, strategy number 3. Record yourself speaking once a week. Now, I know this sounds awkward, but the sources really emphasize its value.
Oh, it is awkward. But it provides this critical, objective perspective you just can't get otherwise.
Why not?
Because when you're actively speaking, your brain is busy doing the task. You can't be a critical listener at the same time. A recording lets you review your output later without the pressure.
And what should you be listening for? It's not just about finding mistakes, right?
Absolutely not. In fact, that's not the main point. Use the recording to identify patterns that disrupt your flow. Listen for excessive filler words like or
Which signal that you're searching for a word.
Exactly. Listen for where your volume dips, which is a sign of low confidence, or where your pitch gets monotonous. But, and this is critical, use it as a tool for positive reinforcement.
So find things you did well.
Yes. Notice things you did well. Maybe your pronunciation of one phrase was really smooth, or you managed to explain a complex idea clearly. You have to focus on progress, not perfection.
Okay, strategy number 4, find real-life opportunities.
Practice exercises are necessary, but real situations offer a kind of pressure and unpredictability that you just can't simulate on your own.
So for listeners in an English-speaking country, that's pretty clear. Ordering coffee, asking for help in a store.
Right.
But what about people practicing in a non-English speaking environment?
You have to manufacture the environment. Join online conversation groups or use language exchange apps like HelloTalk or Candom to connect with partners all over the world.
And look beyond just the language apps.
Yes, this is so important. Join English-speaking online communities related to your actual interests. A Discord server for a video game you love, a Reddit community for cooking, an international online book club.
So you're using English as a tool to connect with people over shared interests.
Exactly, not just as a practice exercise. That motivation changes everything.
Okay, strategy number 5 is vital for flow. Stop translating in your head. This is the #1 flow killer.
It is. Translation is like using an interpreter for your own thoughts. It forces you to construct a thought in your native language, translate it word for word, and then say it in English.
It's a 3-step process.
It's a complex three-step process that creates those agonizingly long pauses we're trying to get rid of. Your brain just can't sustain that effort in a real conversation.
So what's the solution to break that habit?
Mental immersion. You have to force your brain to think in English as much as possible, to bypass your native language. Use internal narration. Constantly label objects around your home in English. When you're doing a task, talk yourself through it silently in English. Another powerful technique is to learn language in chunks, preset phrases like, I was going to say, or that reminds me of, instead of building every sentence from scratch,
It reduces the cognitive load.
and keeps the flow moving.
Okay. And strategy number 6, which brings us right back to the central theme. Focus on progress, not perfection.
Learning is a long journey, and perfectionism is the absolute fastest way to get discouraged and burn out. You should not be comparing yourself to native speakers or highly advanced learners. That comparison is debilitating and unfair.
So how do we measure progress effectively, if not by perfection?
You compare yourself only to yourself from a month ago.
I see.
You ask clear, objective questions about communication and confidence. Can I express more ideas now? Can I understand more of what I hear? Do I speak with fewer long, silent pauses? If you could say yes to those flow-based questions, you are progressing.
And you have to celebrate those small wins.
You have to. It's what maintains your momentum and motivation. Even if you still make 5 grammar mistakes in a conversation, those mistakes don't negate the fact that you spoke for 10 minutes without hesitation.
It's a much healthier, more sustainable way to look at it.
It is. These 6 strategies, when you combine them with the right mindset, that willingness to be imperfect, create the foundation for real, lasting fluency.
And speaking of that mindset, before we talk about a timeline, let's just finalize that shift. What are the 3 essential beliefs you need to succeed with this flow-focused approach?
Okay, first, you have to embrace possibility. You have to fully believe that conversational fluency is achievable for you. It's not just for naturally gifted people or people who moved abroad when they were 5. Anyone can do this with the right approach.
Okay.
Second, you have to adopt the belief that mistakes are essential. See them not as failures, but as necessary learning opportunities. Data points for your brain. You have to be willing to experiment and stumble, knowing that's how you learn to move faster.
And the third belief?
And third, you have to reaffirm that communication over perfection is the ultimate non-negotiable goal. The whole purpose of language is human connection and understanding. If you achieve that connection, you have succeeded. Regardless of a dropped article or a wrong verb tense, the meaning is always more important than the mechanism.
Now for the question every single learner asks. We can't end this without addressing it. How long is it going to take me to feel fluent?
That is the Everest of language questions, isn't it?
Yes.
And the honest, source-backed answer is always, it depends.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know that's not what you want to hear, but it depends on how consistently you practice your output, your native language, how much exposure you get, and most importantly, the methods you use.
But we can give a general guideline, right, based on what the sources say when these flow-focused strategies are applied consistently.
Yes, we can. For someone who is, say, already at a basic or intermediate level, like an A2 or B1, and who commits to consistent daily output practice, so at least 30 minutes of active speaking a day. Basic conversational fluency is often achievable in about 6 months.
6 months, that is an incredibly encouraging time frame, especially for someone who's felt stuck for years. But let's define basic conversational fluency in this context. What does that actually mean?
It means the functional ability to successfully navigate everyday conversations about familiar topics.
Okay.
You can confidently express your needs, your opinions, your feelings. You can understand and respond in real time without needing to pause for translation.
You'll still be making mistakes.
Crucially, yes, you will still be making mistakes. You'll still pause sometimes. But you can successfully hold the conversation and maintain the flow. You're achieving, say, 90% communication success.
So it's not the end of the journey, but it's the point where English stops being this frustrating, high-anxiety chore and starts becoming a functional, reliable tool for connection.
Exactly. Advanced fluency, discussing complex, nuanced topics, understanding fast native speech, using idioms naturally, that takes longer, maybe another 1 or 2 years of dedicated practice. But basic fluency is your 6-month target. Fluency is a spectrum, not an on-off switch.
Okay, let's bring this all together with a final encouragement for everyone listening.
If you're listening right now, we want you to internalize this core message that just changes everything. Stop trying to be perfect, focus on clear communication, and fundamentally, speak more.
Don't hoard your knowledge, use it even if it's messy.
Exactly.
And remember the 6 strategies we talked about. Set flow-based goals. Practice speaking every single day. Record yourself weekly to track your progress. Find real opportunities. Stop that internal translation process and focus only on the progress you're making over time.
Fluency is absolutely achievable for you. It doesn't require you to study harder or be smarter. It just requires a powerful mindset shift and consistent output practice. That moment of effortless speech, that beautiful flow, it is absolutely coming.
And to help you start that process immediately, we have a challenge for you starting today. It's based directly on Strategy 2. We're calling it the 7-Day Flow Challenge.
This is how you put the theory into immediate practice. I love this.
For the next 7 days, we challenge you to speak English out loud for at least 10 minutes every single day.
10 minutes, that's completely doable, even during a commute or while you're making dinner.
Exactly, 10 minutes. Talk to yourself, use the narration technique, call up a language partner. The only rule is this: focus only on letting the words flow.
Give yourself explicit, aggressive permission to make mistakes.
Yes, if you pause and find yourself translating, just force the words out anyway.
And the main goal of this challenge is not to improve your grammar. The purpose is to observe how your confidence and your hesitation levels dramatically change after just 7 days of consistently prioritizing flow over perfection.
Yeah.
You're creating the habit of output.
And if 10 minutes feels like too much, start with 5. The important thing is to start today, not tomorrow, not next week. Take the first imperfect, messy step toward flow right now.
And if you take nothing else away from this deep dive, take this one profound thought with you. Your English is already good enough to communicate. You are already capable. You just need to believe it and actively use it. Use the language to live your life.
You've got the secret now. Go out there, make some mistakes, and find your flow.
We're cheering for you every step of the way. Keep speaking.
Bye, everyone.
Go.